listening to Unpause Your Life with Dr. Cali Estes and Master Coach Jenny Fontana, founders of the Life Coach Method. Each one of our uplifting and deep dive episodes is geared to help you tackle the things that hold you back from having the most magnificent life you deserve. Sit back, relax, and prepare to be coached.
Hey everybody, this is Dr. Cali Estes with the Addictions Coach and Unpause Your Life podcast. I am so excited today. As you know, I love bringing you guests with a diverse background. The requirement for the podcast is you have done something amazing or great in your life. So I want to introduce you to Nick. Nick has a rags to riches story, so we're going to talk about that. He started his life by being raised by a single grandmother in a small city in India, and he ended up graduating from top of his class from Harvard Business School. Good story. We're going to talk about it. Along the way, he has worked at some of the top investing firms in the world, such as Bain Capital and Greenlight, and has led dramatic business transformations in 3 different industries: trucking, men's shoes, which I know a little bit about shoes, but not a whole lot, and now B2B software, which is what you may be interested in. He's an expert at marketing, team management, and creating a win-win-win outcome for his 3 stakeholders: customers, employees, and shareholders. Welcome, Nick.
Thank you so much for having me and for the kind introduction, Dr. Estes.
I'm excited to have you. I'm always interested in the rags to riches story. So let's start with that. Tell me what it was like growing up, what your resources were like, and how you go from nothing to Harvard. Because, you know, Harvard is like exclusive and special and hard to get into.
maybe a little less exclusive once they let folks like me in. So look, the early part of my life was a very typical immigrant story. My folks immigrated from India to Canada in the 1980s. They had a kid and they realized, crap, we can't afford to raise a kid. My father was working at McDonald's. My mother's college degree had been rejected, so she needed to go back to school again. And she, so her master's degree in biology from India didn't count for squat, so she had to restart at college and get a technical degree. So they had this kid and they're like, oh God, how do we take care of this kid? They sent me to live with my grandmother in India on the other side of the world. So I didn't actually see my parents till I was about age 5. And during those 5 years in India, a couple of things obviously happened. Number one, I grew really close to my grandmother. Number two, I actually grew up speaking Hindi as my mother tongue rather than English. So I started learning English, later in my life. And number three, I kind of gained the experience of what it was like growing up in a developing country in the 1980s. So we had 2 hours running water a day, 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour at night. And my job as like a 3-year-old was to go fill the tank downstairs if my grandmother was out of the house or her sister who was living with us was out of the house. So as a 3-year-old, my job, I had some serious responsibilities: make sure the water's filled, otherwise we don't have drinking water for the day. Electricity would go on and off sporadically if you're watching TV, so you'd have so kind of kind of interesting emerging market experience in my life. At age 5, I emigrated to Canada. By that time, my parents had become a little bit more settled, and kind of throughout my life lived throughout my childhood with my parents in Canada, lived like called a lower middle class life. My father was a janitor at the local school district. Probably, never starving, never hungry, thankfully, but certainly not economically secure.
So let me ask you this question. So you had 5 years in India, then you're in Canada. You have no Indian accent, you have no Canadian accent. When did you become Americanized?
So many people, including my wife, do say I have a bit of a Canadian accent. It'll emerge when I say sorry or a couple other words. I have now been in the United States since 2005 when I came for college. So what is that? Nearly 20 years now. Became an American citizen last November.
Congratulations.
No, I've been here a long time now, but in terms of accents, the funny thing is, look, if you start learning English when you are, 4 or 5 years old, you don't develop with an accent, I imagine. Number two is, I grew up in the west coast of Canada, and that has a very neutral American accent. It's not dissimilar from what a Californian, a Washingtonian, or a kind of a New Yorker would have. A non-Brooklyn New Yorker, I should say.
So you've been to Banff then?
I have not. I've actually never been more than about 100 miles. So I've lived all over the United States and world at this point, like 3 or 4 different countries, but I've never been more than about 150 miles from where the small town I grew up within Canada.
That's crazy.
I know.
That's like people down here in Florida live near Orlando but don't go to Disney. They're like, oh, Disney's 20 minutes up the road. They don't go, and people from all over the world come to Disney. That's crazy.
Yeah, I have
Yeah,
not been to, Toronto or Montreal, or I've been to like all the places in Canada that people go. It's funny, I've just never had the experience being there, and yet I've lived in San Francisco, Boston, New York, Houston, Madison, Rouen in France for a while, India obviously, but really in Canada, my experience is 150-mile radius of where I grew up.
that's crazy. Okay, so let's talk about, so your dad is a janitor, your mom's in biology. How do you get into tech? Because tech is like, all the things you could do, and how do you get to Harvard?
Sure. So two things, right? My parents made a really kind of interesting decision. We had a computer in our house, like a personal computer, from that very first day I immigrated from India. So this was before people had, most people didn't have computers in their offices, and I had a computer accessible. And I don't know if it was my parents just loved this or they were forward thinking, but I had a computer, so I kind of throughout my life. So I've been tinkering around in some way, shape, or form with computers, playing, whether it be playing games or writing a very simple GeoCities website, 25 years ago. Um, Number two is I was really interested in the sciences. That's what I wanted to do when I grew up. So I studied math and physics throughout high school. That's what I got my degree in. And if you're studying math and physics, you code a little bit along the way. Um, then there was a bit of a kind of a trajectory where I went into Wall Street for a while, and it's very common if you end up in Wall Street to go to business school. You try and get into whatever good business school lets you in. Um, I was fortunate enough, obviously, to get into Harvard, and then since then, I have become what I call a professional CEO. People hire me to run companies. So when a private equity firm, a venture capital firm, or founders are ready for their organization or company to go to that next stage of success and growth, they bring in someone like me. And so this is the third company that I've run or co-run. The first was a big trucking company, $100 million in revenue. The next one was a small men's shoe startup. And now for the past 2 years, I've had the pleasure and honor of being CEO of IdeaScale, which is the largest innovation software company on the planet.
So, okay, so let's just talk about that for a second. So you get this phone call from a company, from an industry you don't know, trucking.
Literally got a random phone call that yes.
Okay, and they're like, here, I'm going to just hand you my baby of a company, and you know nothing about trucking, and you're going to figure it out and make us more money, in a nutshell.
Basically, yes.
Okay, so I just want to talk about how you feel when you get that phone call for a minute, because you don't know the industry. So what does that feel like? Because, of course, I'm a therapist, I'm a psychologist. I want to know what goes through your head when you're like, I got to learn everything I need to know about this right now.
So I am motivated by challenges. So when someone gives me that crazy call, I get two immediate feelings. Number one, wow, isn't it going to be cool to learn about this new industry? And number two, hey, isn't this going to be an awesome opportunity for me, right? Like I think about, my wife likes to joke that I always think about the upsides in life. When someone gives you a call to be a CEO, there's a lot of upside in that professionally, personally, in terms of growth. You don't think about all the horrible sides, but hey, I'm going to work 100 hours a week for the next year to learn about all the stuff I don't know. And certainly, while I was working at the trucking company or the shoe company or each of these companies, there's been a lot of effort once I joined the company about becoming an expert on the domain, right? When learning about shoes, I knew nothing about shoes showing up. But that's not what goes through my mind when I get the call. It's like, hey, this is awesome. I'm going to learn a bunch of new stuff, and it's going to be a great professional opportunity.
So let me ask this question. Are all companies the same? Sales is the same. It doesn't matter what they're selling, but there's like a blueprint that you follow. Would you say that's true, or would you have to switch as you kind of go?
I think that there's three things that are the same and one thing that is materially different. The one thing that's materially different is the domain expertise, right? I know nothing about the oil industry. And if I were to go into the oil or energy industry, there'd just be a tremendous amount of knowledge that I would have to learn. Like, how do you dig an oil well or drill an oil well? I probably used the wrong term there, right? Learn the nomenclature, the language, the lingo, the domain expertise, the technical stuff. And that's not just true in like technical industries. If I went and worked at McDonald's, I'd have to learn a lot about how burgers are made because I don't know, right?
Have you ever been to Texas?
I have. I lived in Houston for 3 months and Dallas for like 5.
Okay, I lived in Dallas for years. I lived in Houston and Galveston. All I can imagine is these bunch of old cowboys sitting around a table with their big cowboy hat, going, well, I reckon here comes Nick and he don't know anything about the oil industry. And you're going, we're going to drill. I mean, we're going to, and he's going, and this is the guy that's going to run our company. I could just see like you walking in all excited. You got your notebook, you're ready to go. And they're like old school oil men.
So when I
Oh,
was working in, I had a similar experience like that. When I was working in Houston, I was working at a chemical factory. They made high grade silicon to go into computer chips. So it was a factory. It was literally a factory, a big chemical factory. Everyone's wearing, fire retardant blue overalls. And me and like three other consultants, I was a consultant at that time in my career, are sitting in like, one of the trailers, basically making PowerPoints and doing Excel math, totally very different than what 95% of the people there were doing, right? And yes, everyone else had Hummers, and we had our cheap, I think it was a Kia rental, and there were like 3 Hummers sitting in the parking lot, these giant Texan, trucks.
Yep.
And we had this, whatever the cheapest rental car was, because we just literally needed to get from the hotel to the factory every day. But so the thing that's, to go back to your question, the thing that's different is domain expertise, and that does matter, and it requires a lot of expertise that either developed over years or intensely developed over a short period of time, which is possible but painful. The 3 things that do remain constant across industries, one is what you said, like finance, HR, sales, marketing. They're not that different from industry to industry. There are right ways to do marketing. There are right ways to run an HR. There are right ways to lead people. Number 2 is you as an individual don't change that much. Obviously, you're going to change. If I was to move down to Texas, I'd probably, the way I'd speak or the language I'd speak may change. But in general, like 95% of who Nick is not going to change from circumstance to circumstance. I can change the 5%, but 95% of who I am is who I am. And then the third thing that actually remains constant is an understanding of how businesses work. If you think about how, ignoring finance and HR and all that stuff, all businesses, all private sector enterprises exist for one purpose. You put in $100 and you want to get a positive return on investment out. You need to get $110 out or whatever. And the mechanics of that, how that works, boils down to a pretty simple equation, basically, that is constant across all companies. And having a deep understanding of how do private sector organizations or capitalist enterprises generate profit and create value for society is actually a constant across industries.
Interesting. So the software company you're with now, tell me how that's different than the shoe company, and tell me what the mission, the goal of that company would be.
Sure. So the biggest difference is, I'm at the shoe company, our customers were individuals. They were, 16 to 40-year-old men who wanted to wear very fancy sneakers. Think like Jordans and Yeezys and things like that, right? That was my audience. People who are very hip and very cultured, into hip hop culture.
Hold on.
Yeah.
I'm going to disagree with the Yeezy slides and cultured. I'm not going to put those 2 words together ever. I've seen those Yeezy slides and I'm like, they look like prison shoes. That's what they were in prison.
Some are, but there are really nice ones. There's some that are terrible design and are just like showy and ugly, right? But there's others that are really cool looking. Now, would I spend $600 for them? No, absolutely not. I'd rather just buy my $60 pair of running shoes to go for a jog But do they look cool? Yes, right? So there's hundreds of designs of these. So but, let's not pick on the ugly ones. The good ones are like nice, and you'll see. Actually, it's funny that there's a lot of extremely what is it at the Met Gala? There were, I think, a not disproportionate number of men were wearing like super high-end sneakers instead of traditional dress shoes.
So he broke the market. He broke into the market. That's interesting.
Which is funny. At the Met Gala, 20 years ago, men would be wearing dress shoes, and as recently as 5 years ago onwards, there's a large portion of men that are wearing these, high-end sneakers that are worth hundreds or thousands of dollars and look very nice. But anyways, the audience that was my audience in the shoe world. My audience today is large corporations and large governments. So think like Comcast, Pfizer, the U.S. Post Office, U.S. Coast Guard, big hospital systems in Australia. So my customers are very, very different. They're, senior executives. They're buying a complex piece of software. They're not just trying to, it doesn't need to just look good. It needs to be super functional. So the demands are much greater, and the audience is candidly just more sophisticated because they're paying a ton of money for something that should drive a lot of value for their organization.
Awesome. So let me try to translate this. So you said there's software that's free, that's available for free. Tell
Correct.
me about that and why is it free and why are you not charging for it?
Sure. So I do charge my customers obviously for software, right? What our software does is you can think of it like a social network for ideas. So it's TikTok for ideas. Instead of posting a funny dance video or a picture of your cat wearing an outfit, you post an idea, and an idea could be for a new product, a new process, snacks in the kitchen, whatever it is that are relevant to your organization and its mission. And other people vote and upvote and downvote the ideas, and the best ideas rise to the top. The same way the best dance video from Vietnam may end up on the top of your TikTok or Instagram feed. That's what our software does. It helps, and the consequence is it helps people ideate and innovate better. I offer my software completely free to teams and organizations less than 100 people. So you can be an individual with a Gmail address or a 99-person team at a billion-dollar corporation. Our software is completely free for you. And the reason we do that is twofold. Number one is our founder's mission was very clearly we want to enable and empower innovation throughout the world. That is kind of an overriding mission statement for us. And if we really believe that, then we need to make our software accessible to everyone. The great thing about software is it's very low cost to deploy. So if I can give away something for free because it really doesn't cost me anything and it aligns with the mission that our founder and board laid out. So that's very deeply what we believe in at IdeaScale. Number two is practically, look, a lot of those people will eventually grow into larger organizations or move to other organizations, and they will say, hey, we liked IdeaScale. They did us a solid when we couldn't afford them. Let's at least make them the first call when we're ready to go commercial with the software. And again, you're getting like 98% of the feature set. Basically, all that's being limited is the number of users, and we don't add some fancy like integrations with other software.
Okay. So for our listeners, we have a lot of counselors and therapists and different people. They can go to IdeaScale, ideascale.com. Would I be
Yep.
correct? Okay.
Ideascale.com.
And they can sign up and they can get some free software. So that's awesome.
Yeah, and you literally just click Get Started Free at the top right. Takes less than 30 seconds to sign up. You can sign in with your Gmail or whatever address, and you're up and running in 30 seconds. Entirely online, no downloads, no setup required. I highly encourage your audience to check it out. And you can use it either as a personal notepad or to collaborate between your fellow therapists in a community or practice, which is kind of cool because you can, as I was showing up to prepping for this, I thought, hey, wouldn't it be easy to, or wouldn't it be valuable for you guys to have a forum to share different therapeutic practices that you may, like what's working with your patients may also work for other therapists, and you can obviously share that in an entirely anonymized way.
We are all doing that now using Facebook because there is no software for us that we can
Again,
collaborate.
we're a social network for ideas. Literally, that's what we do.
So that's awesome because in my industry, everybody's so concerned about HIPAA. You can't do this, you can't do that. But therapists can talk to each other. But we haven't been able to collaborate because the only modality we have really is Facebook. Because you can't collaborate on Instagram, you can't collaborate on TikTok. So it's been Facebook. So we've been joining Facebook groups and creating Facebook groups. So this will be nice.
That's literally what we do. And the big advantage there's two big advantages over Facebook. Facebook, everything is meant to be like visible to the world, right? You can make stuff private, so that's a lot more compliant with HIPAA. I have very sensitive data on my platform with my clients, financial data, healthcare data, so it's insanely secure. Number two is, I use Facebook obviously for my social purposes, but Facebook is a stream, right? Like it's really hard to find a post from 3 months ago or a year ago, whereas our platform is designed to be around ideas rather than organized around time. So if you have a great idea that all your fellow collaborators or fellow therapists think is great, that's going to stay at the top automatically. And if over time, if it dies down because people think it's less exciting or less valuable or been replaced by better therapy, it will naturally just slow down and die in the same way that a TikTok post gets less viral over time.
Awesome. So this is great. So when we put the show live, we're going to put all of your links and the website so that the therapists and the coaches and all of our people can go there, our listener base. We also have a lot of people that have trained under me at the Addictions Academy. So we've got 40,000 people in 40 countries. I'm sorry, 60,000 people in 40 countries. So we're going to send an email out to everybody with your information as well to funnel them to your software. I'm assuming this is good globally. This is not just
anywhere in the world. I've employees in 8 countries and customers in like 25. Lots of different every major language is supported. So
awesome.
It's actually funny. One of your collaborators can be writing in Spanish and it's showing up to you in English. So it's so you can have meaningful technical discussions. Again, I'm not a therapist, so I don't understand the nomenclature you guys use, but you could be talking very technical language in English and someone could be responding in similarly technical clinical language in Japanese, and you guys can have a constructive discussion on what are the good ways to treat your patients. I keep wanting to say clients. Patients is the right word.
We say clients and patients. So this sounds like this software is a game changer. Do you have any competitors?
Many of our customers, right? Because the business purpose we solve is like we eliminate all those silos and distinctions between. If you have a 20,000 person organization, which who are our customers, how does the CEO talk to the junior person in Japan or hear his or her idea? They don't. It's the honest truth, and we solve that problem. In fact, we use our software in house. That's how the best idea. We use it to make our own software better. And that's how ideas from my employee in South Africa or my support person in India or my sales rep in Mexico, they can all say like, hey, this is how you can make our software better. And we use it ourselves. Like we, eat our own cooking, drink our own champagne.
That's awesome. That's very awesome. So, okay, so we're going to put all that up for everybody. I'm excited about it. I'm actually excited to go download the software and get started because I know.
Download, by the way, entirely on the cloud. So no downloads required.
Even better, because everything in my industry is a download to a hard drive. Like everybody's afraid of the cloud.
100% online, and crazy secure. So because the data is not sitting on your phone, which somebody steals, right? It's sitting on a incredibly secure, enterprise grade software system.
I am so excited for this. You have no idea. I couldn't wait for you to come on today because I was looking at this and I'm like, this could be a game changer in my space because we've got, and I don't mean my space. I mean my industry. Because oh my goodness, I was talking to a therapist the other day and she says, well, do you have a MySpace account? And I'm like, a what? She says, MySpace, can you find me on there? And I'm thinking to myself, MySpace was like 20 years ago. I don't even.
It's still there for independent music artists and artists. It's still a big thing.
That's
just for a niche community.
She was communicating and I'm like, I don't even know what my login is. So this is going to be great because it'll be able to bring us all together. So which I believe is the purpose of your software.
Literally. Yeah. And we would love to support your guys' mission because that's, again, what our founders and board laid out and that we strongly believe in as an organization.
I appreciate it. So we are out of time. So I'm going to ask you to leave our listeners with one piece of advice. If they are struggling or having a bad day because you're so positive and you always look at the positive side of things, what's one thing they can do to make their life a little bit more positive or to unpause their life today?
Get some fresh air. We all sit inside way too much on phones and computers or on couches and TV. Go get some fresh air. The outside is a nice place.
The outside is a nice place. I love that. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. And everybody, you have been listening to Unpause Your Life with Dr. Cali Estes and my guest today, Nick from Idea Scale. We will put everything up for you to look at and check out and tune in for a new episode every week.
Thank you for listening to Unpause Your Life with Dr. Cali Estes and Master Coach Jenny Fontana. Head over to www.thelifecoachmethod.com to learn more about coaching yourself and how to become a master coach.